It's Zach Eady with Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I am your host, Joe Jackson. Joining me, as always, is Kraig Bowers, and we are on part 4 of our Purdue freshman kind of preview shows that we're doing this summer. Talking about Raleigh Burgess today. Very interesting player that I think is probably one of the more unknowns, and we'll dive into all of that throughout the show. But first, I want to throw it to you, Kraig. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I've kind of done a deep dive today. I think you and I talked before about Raleigh and just kind of our initial thoughts before we came on the show. And leading up to today, I watched a couple of full games from high school, and I'm maybe more confused about the outcome, maybe less confident in terms of what exactly my predictions are than anybody that we've looked at so far on this team. But I don't know if you saw or not, Joe, but there were some interesting things that happened in the Purdue Twitter space this week. And the great Raphael Davis, I shouldn't late in terms of his former Purdue basketball player, Raphael Davis, put a tweet out there that Rutgers may have the best backcourt in the Big Ten this year. And one Mr. Braden Smith appeared to take exception with that. And given the fact that you have Braden and Lawyer coming back as juniors, two guards that helped take Purdue to the national championship games, is there an argument to be made that anybody else in the Big Ten might have a better backcourt than Purdue? Or is it just kind of solidified that, hey, Braden and Fletch have shown what they can do and they are the best backcourt in the Big Ten?
Braden and Fletch they're the most proven backcourts, right? There is nobody else there's nobody else in the conference that have come close to what they've done. And they're only going to be juniors, right? In their 2 years, nobody has done what they have done. I understand what Raphael was saying, though. Like, if everything hits for Rutgers, then yes, they could easily be the best backcourt. I think right now it's still Braden and Fletch's like throne, right? And Dylan and Jeremiah Williams have to come and kind of take it. I think like Dylan Harper's just like he's a dude. He's going to be a top 5 pick probably. Like there's a reason that he's going to be a top 5 pick. The dude is insane. He's going to be one of my favorite players to watch in the Big Ten. Braden Smith's going to also be my favorite player to watch in the Big Ten. And Braden Smith will probably be Big Ten Player of the Year front runner, right? And so Dylan Harper has a chance to, if things go right, to be like a first team, second team type player. And then it's kind of what is the secondary, right? Where Jeremiah Williams had a great little stretch there towards the end of the season. Obviously, it's not really his fault that he missed the games prior. Fletch has shown what he did. He has his ups and downs, but I mean, I've kind of advocated, I know you have too, this offseason of like, hey, Fletch is like still good at basketball. Like, yes, he struggled finishing at the rim, but dude was probably the best shooter in the Big Ten and one of the best shooters in the country. Plus can do more than that, make good passes, things like that. I think the concern, like if Harper and Williams overtake, it's because Harper's a top 5 pick and Williams fits well next to him. My only slight concern is that Harper can play off ball, and he's the one I think you can play off ball more than Williams, but also you kind of want to just give Dylan Harper the ball. And so with him being more ball dominant with Ace Bailey, assuming taking a lot of touches, I think the concern then is that like, what does Jeremiah Williams look like in more of this off ball role? That's a long way to say. Right now, it's still Braden and Fletch. It's still theirs. Dylan and Dylan Harper and Jeremiah Williams can come take it, but for right now, until like proven otherwise, I'm still taking Braden and Fletch.
Yeah, and I'm 100% with you there. I'm excited to watch. I've always had like a Pikel coach crush.
Yeah.
In terms of what he gets out of his players for what he has, and now that he has some stars, like I'm really excited to watch that team this year. But with that said, I'm 100% with you. I still think this is Braden and Fletch's throne until somebody else takes it away within the Big Ten. But maybe more than anything else, like I was just kind of pumped that Braden chirped back.
Yeah.
Like, hey, whoa, hold on. Like Fletch and I are coming. And that makes me excited that those guys are hungry still like that. And something can motivate them like that.
Yeah, for sure. It is great to see that. I mean, Braden should come into this season thinking that he's the best player in the Big Ten. He should be coming in thinking he's an All-American, right? Like that's what the mentality he should have himself. I had a thought this week, and I'm going to throw it to you, and we can keep this one brief because it maybe could be a good show idea in the future. But I don't think we've ever discussed this specifically. But Zach Edey's block on Dalton Connect, right, sends Purdue to the Final Four. Is that the greatest, like including context and all that, not just like physical feats? Is that the greatest play in Purdue men's basketball history?
Man, that's loaded. There's, we have some listeners on here that are, I know you think of me as like the old head in Purdue basketball, but then there'll be somebody chirping in about games from the 1960s, like in the comments. So like, that's a dangerous road for me to go down in terms of that. I mean, because of the context of it and where it sent Purdue, I think there's a good chance. I think, on all honesty, 2.5 minutes before that, Lance Jones hitting that three has an argument that really is what seals that game. To a degree. Like the whole talk last year was like, you just have to have a guy who's willing to take a big shot and make a big shot. He did. So like, to me, those are the two moments in that game. And because of the context of what Purdue's only been the national championship game twice. So it's got to be a moment from one of those two games. And to me, those are the two moments from that game. I don't remember the moments from the other game because I was 3 years old. So
fair enough. Yeah. I don't know. It popped into my head and I was like,
no, I wasn't 3 years old. 1980 is the last time they went to the Final Four, right?
Yeah.
National championship. I wasn't even born.
That was like 60, whatever, right?
Yeah. 69?
Something like
Somebody
that.
in the comments tell us.
Yeah, my thinking was like, because I'm sure I haven't watched much Glenn Robinson film. I should at some point. Like, I'm sure there's some random play Glenn Robinson did that's just like, oh, like that shouldn't be possible type thing. But I'm taking like context into account. Zach Edey, 2-time National Player of the Year. Like just taking in all the context. That was where the thought popped in my head. Maybe we could do a show on that. We do some research at some point.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably just because the imagery of that. I'm like, how many times have we seen the picture of that since it happened?
Yeah.
But watching it live with you, like the moment that felt the biggest to me was Lance hitting that three.
Okay.
I felt like that's when everybody was like, okay, we got it. Like the game's over.
Fair enough. Jeff Parks comes in, says 1969. So that was, appreciate that. Let's move on to Burgess. 6'10", 200. I think I have the wrong thing up. He was listed at 225 before. He's now listed at 6'11", 240 pounds. Played at Sycamore High School in Ohio. Averaged 15.3 points, 9.9 rebounds, 3.2 blocks, 1.5 assists. Shot 35% from three, but he was only 8 for 23 on the season in 27 minutes a game. Also, like, and I know you said you got to some of the film today. Like, they just played low scoring games. Their high school, like 15.3 points for what some of their scores were 40 to 37 type. So scoring 15 points in that context still is impressive. Only other kind of not interesting, but piece of background that I think is important is he did suffer a lower leg injury sometime during his junior season. I know it took him out for the rest of that year, and I believe all of his final AAU season. So no real AAU stats from last year or anything like that for him. And I think as I watched some of his film in the middle when I was doing my thing. Then we've talked offline, and I was like, okay, I need to go watch like some late season film. I think you did see him round into form a little bit more by the end of the season, and that's carrying him into Purdue this off season. So I know we're gonna have a lot of tangents and things to talk about with Burgess, as he's just kind of an interesting piece for this team this season specifically. But just kind of your broad initial thoughts of Burgess when you watched the film and saw him in practice.
Well, and I think to put some context of Burgess, I think there's some similarities here. Oh shoot, I'm drawing a blank. Who is the? I think there's some similarities back to Cam Heide. Of you saw Cam Heide rank like in the top 80 in the country. Then Cam gets hurt. He drops in the rankings. People watch him play as he's coming back from injury and drops some more before he goes to college. And then that athleticism comes back when you see Cam step on the floor for the first time. Obviously, he took a redshirt year to get there. But like, I think there's some similarities here because Burgess was top 75 on Rivals before he gets injured. He ends up dropping, and I think in the end on 247 composite, he finishes around 130. But I won't be shocked at all if we don't see a similar sort of narrative and arc. Because just going back, like I was saying, I watched a few full high school games. And what I saw in practice the other day in terms of his pop and his ability to just get up and easily dunk and doing it from a few feet out and wanting to attack the rim, I didn't see that in those high school games that I watched. And I'm like, okay, how do I balance what I saw 2 weeks ago in a practice versus what I saw in a real game situation? But in those real game situations at the high school level anyway, man, you saw like high school teams sending 3 guys on him every time he touched the ball.
Yeah.
And him having to try to, and half the time they were just hacking him and hope he wouldn't make the free throws. I think I didn't find any full AAU games of him, but there were lots of AAU highlights out there. And I feel like that might be a little bit more indicative of who he is, where he's playing with other talent around him and he's not constantly getting double teamed or triple teamed, that sort of thing. And in those AAU highlights back before he was injured, he wanted to dunk everything.
Okay.
Like it looked like every time he touched the ball, he wanted to throw it down. He wanted to attack. And I think that's my first read. If I'm looking at those AAU highlights and I'm looking at what I saw in practice the other day, he is aggressive. He plays really, really hard, and he wants to punish people when he gets the ball. If he can dunk, he's going to dunk. It is my initial impression of him. And I told you when I came out of that practice, there was a moment just in drills where, like, you know, they were getting defended, but it was a drill with like 3-on-3 or 2-on-2. And he gets the ball, he gets a step on another big man at Purdue, and he takes off from 3 or 4 feet out and throws it down. And Painter just turns around and his eyes got like massively big. And he looked at the other coaches like, oh my, you know? And I think if he's fully healed, he's going to have that type of pop again. And I would say my other initial read is, from what I saw just in shoot around and practice the other day, from what I saw looking back at film, is I won't be surprised if he's not the best 3-point shooter in the big men room on this team this year.
I mean, yeah, I guess, yeah, TKR would be his biggest competition for right now.
And I just think I think his shot is more consistent. I think when TKR, like when everything's perfect, it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
But I think Burgess's shot is more repeatable, more consistent. And even when he misses, I still think, like that's good form. Like the shot looked good, even when he misses. Every once in a while, TKR hits the side of the backboard, you know, sort of thing. Yeah, I think he can bring a little bit of inside out ball at 6'11", 240 pounds still. I know we're going to get into it more. I'll let you kind of delve into that. I guess I have some questions defensively.
Yeah. So one, makes me feel better in just my analysis, because you were saying like, because we talked off air after the practice and you're like, yeah, athleticism and all this. And I was just like, man, I just didn't see it in high school film. I obviously was not at the practice. And I was like, and even like I went back and watched like the late season stuff today. And I was like, okay, I see it a little more, but it's not like, I was like, I'm not like overwhelmed by it, but it does make sense then. Like, and I think when you take into account the injury, especially, right, where it's just like, I don't know what the actual specific injury was. I know it was kept him out for a while. And so when he's starting to come back for that, it makes sense. Plus what the defensive coverage, he's getting all that. So all of that out of the way, like he's just, I got no other words than he's just like, well, I have lots of other words and we'll talk about him for a lot more. But my main thought is just like, he's an interesting prospect overall. You just kind of are like, it's like, okay, you see the athletic upside and you see what he can do there. And you can see like, okay, well, maybe he sort of can move also, but he can also kind of work on the post. And maybe someday he can be a guy that can step out and shoot. The shooting stats, 8 for 23 from 3 last season, 35%, whatever, low volume. 88 for 134 from the free throw line, which is 66%. Not the best, but that is one season. I could try to find more sample size if I looked while you're talking next. But yeah, just like a guy that you see so much upside. And the biggest, it's just going to be, what does Purdue develop him as? Is he the next kind of TKR where it's just kind of this can play the 4, but you're going to work him in the post more? Is he going to go more like the Caleb First mold of like, hey, just kind of this athletic 4-5 that can hopefully have some up? Well, that's where they differ a little bit, but have upside defensively, but then still have this game where it's like, hey, he's going to punish you at the rim, be able to maybe step out. And so I think that's really going to be the biggest thing, is what is his development like, more so than really than probably any other player, any other freshman on Purdue for me, is like what he does developmental wise is going to be big, because I think it's for him, especially, is the difference between him one day being a, top 3 guy on the team and somebody that's like a, 5th man kind of his senior year. Yeah, I think that's kind of it for my initial thoughts. I know you said you had some questions. We'll just throw it to you then. Where you kind of want to go with this?
Well, no, like just kind of touching on what you're saying in terms of how you compare him and like how he develops this year, maybe a bigger question in terms of how many minutes he gets than anybody else that we've talked about so far, or that we may talk about. I think that's very true, because with everybody else that we've looked at and Jakari that we're going to look at, like, you can immediately say Jakari's size, ball handling skills, and defensive presence, like just the fact that he has that size and can handle the ball is going to get him on the floor in backup point guard minutes.
Yeah.
You can look at CJ and say his ability to read the floor, passing ability, shot making, and he's also a good defender. Like, that's going to get him on the floor. I think when you look at Burgess and then Jacobson, you're like, singularly, if he does nothing else, he brings that shot blocking.
Yeah.
That can get him on the floor. I think the hard thing with Burgess is you look at him and say, okay, well, all right, maybe he shoots the 3 a little bit, not a lot, better than any other option at the 4. But TKR is a better post player. First is more athletic as a defender. Like, there's all these. What is the one thing that he may bring that's definitely going to get him on the floor this year, I think, is the biggest question. And I think the thing is, like, he does a lot of little things really well. He's going to have to develop where all those little things together come to the point where they make him a better option than First or one of the 5s if they're going to put him at the 4 as a in small ball. But I still just I think that question really comes down. Well, we'll get in that when you say first year thoughts, because I got a whole friggin' rabbit hole that I'm going to dive down here in a second. But I mean, my question is, just watching him, is when he did get stuck out on an island with a smaller guard, like, man, he struggled laterally and struggled to keep those guards in front of him, or even wings at sometimes. And at that level, he could recover a lot of times and block him from behind. That's not going to happen at the college level against a lot of those people. And so, that's the thing that First does really well. Even though everything else fell apart last year, like, First was still a really mobile big that could switch defensively. So I have those concerns defensively about him. I think he has some offensive upside, not necessarily something that is automatically definitively better than everybody else on the team. But I really like him as a well-rounded total prospect, and I've basically just given everybody a big nothing burger that I have no idea.
Yeah, and that's kind of the theme with the Purdue big man room, and that's sort of my thoughts as we get into like the year one impact for me. Is like, we are recording this July 25th. New info can come in. I can change my mind before the season for everybody out there. But as of right now, like, if I had to guess, I still think he ultimately just falls out of the rotation. And I think it's less him and more just like, there's 80 minutes to go at the 4 and the 5 position, right? And if we'll even say Burgess can play both, because I think there's upside for him to play both. TKR is taking 30 minutes, right? We can confidently pencil that one in. There's 50 minutes up for grabs. Berg is probably the next likely to get a shot at big minutes, whether that's 15, 20, 25. If that's 20, that means there's 30 minutes left between First, Jacobson, and Burgess. Jacobson is purely a 5. First and Burgess can be more of this 4 spot. Burgess maybe is a little bit more natural of a 4. And that's assuming Cam Heide never plays the 4, right? That's assuming that never happens, which I am very hopeful that Cam Heide does play the 4 at some point. And so then it's just like, okay, so let's say there's these 30 minutes kind of to go around. How does Burgess fit? And you kind of hit on this a little bit. In year 1 specifically, if he's the 4, right? So you're playing him next to, in theory, Berg or Jacobson type, or First, we'll say. More of a true rim protector, more of a true kind of inside player. Is Burgess now going to be this TKR role where he is a post-up 4? Is he going to be somebody they try to space out? Defensively, is he going to be quick enough to guard for us? But then if he's the 5, specifically next to like TKR, it's kind of the same questions. Are you going to try to post him up too? Are you spacing him again? Maybe now I think I like him as like a roller, assuming the movement's there. And have Brains just throw up some lobs and say, hey, go get him. He's like, position versatility is a very, very good thing to have. And I think long-term, he very much has it. He's almost just like, he's like purely a 4.5 to me in position. Like he is half a 4, half a 5. And I think on this team specifically, that makes it tough to find the spots for him. I hope I explained that well, but that's kind of my thought. It's just like, he's just so in between that it's like, it's hard for me to find how he specifically fits this year without like the development. I also just think a year on his body is going to be big. Like just a little bit more muscular, a little bit quicker. I think that's going to be very, very important for him.
Dude, he looked stout the other day. Like I'm telling you, in terms of muscular definition and build and body, like he fit in. He fit in with TKR. He fit in with TKR and First. I think maybe the one thing that does get him some court time is just the fact that he plays so hard all the time and he plays so aggressive all the time. And we know Painter loves that, right? Yeah. It's just that hard, aggressive big man that's pounding in the post. Maybe that gets him some time. So where I struggle a little bit with the year 1 thing is if we think about how Purdue has built their team over the last, 7 years, by and large, it has been with a friggin' oak tree of a postman that is going to clean stuff up on the back end, whether that's Zach Edey, whether that's Isaac Haas. Obviously, Matt Harms was a little bit more mobile, but still a 7'3" big man that was going to block shots. And primarily, it has been very skilled 1, 2, and 3s. Not necessarily what anybody from outside of Purdue's world would call very athletic or very long 1, 2s, and 3s, right? Very skilled, high IQ, good shot making point guards, 2s and 3s. And that 4 spot's kind of varied over the years, right? Like Vince Edwards is a completely different type of 4 than TKR is at a 4. That 4 spot's kind of floated, kind of varied a little bit. So if we think about how this team's going to play this year, you've got the traditional Purdue model of Berg or Jacobson at the 5 as big men that are over 7'2" that we think can clean everything up on the back end. Hopefully, if perimeter players get past our very highly skilled, maybe not the longest, maybe not the most athletic starting perimeter. Okay. Other than Cam Heide, right? Cam Heide's long, Cam Heide's athletic, maybe a little bit different model than in the past. But if that's the case, or small ball, like Painter's talked about in interviews already, where you've got TKR at the 5, quote unquote, on offense. He's the main post presence on offense. And then you pair him with First, Burgess, Waddell, and he said if they had to, Cam Heide. Man, if I start thinking about Burgess next to TKR or Burgess next to a couple other those names, I just don't know that it works defensively at all.
Yeah.
So where I kind of walked myself back to was if TKR is playing the 5, First has to be out there at the 4 from a defensive standpoint in my mind.
Or just
If
forget
we
about defense. Let's just score 100. Who cares?
right. So where my thought is right now is First maybe getting his minutes with TKR primarily, and Burgess coming in and playing that TKR 4 role in those moments where like First and TKR are both on the bench. But he plays that next to either Jacobson or next to Berg. And to me, that's down to like 6-7 minutes a game. So I'm looking at like 6 to 8 minutes unless everything just comes to the point where he beats out Caleb First at some point. Maybe that can happen offensively. I just don't see that happen defensively this year. So I think it's a pretty minor impact overall. Maybe 4.5 to 6 points a game, 5 points a game, 6 to 7 minutes a game type of situation.
6 points in 6 minutes. That's impressive.
Okay, that's too much. So three points a game and 6 minutes a game.
I think
that's kind of where I walked myself to, because I just don't see it working small ballish wise. I think there's better options defensively. Now, okay, my last caveat to this, Joe, where I do think that could. So when you look at teams that don't have big rim protectors behind to clean up everybody's mess, they either have super athletic kind of hybrid 4s that can guard wings and can still have the length to come down and protect in the post. But they also have really good perimeter defensive players that are going to disrupt the offense from the beginning. So it makes it hard to get the ball down low or to get the ball in the paint to start with. So here's where I walked it in, Joe. A lineup where Braden and Fletcher rested. Okay. So you've got Jakari, you've got CJ, you've got Cam on the perimeter. That's probably the most disruptive perimeter defense we could have. And then maybe you could have a Burgess TKR pairing down low.
So to summarize both of us for the last 12 minutes, it's probably not a big impact, but also like maybe he just pops off. And I think that summarizes it fairly well. Not that I told you, I don't disagree. Like
I told you I went down a rabbit hole with all that.
Yeah. And we'll kind of a preview ahead. Like we plan on doing a show kind of per position group, like guards, wings, bigs, kind of after we finish up the freshmen. So we'll probably have like an hour and a half show. It feels like we're heading there on the big room. So we'll be able to talk more about the fits and things like that there. As we kind of get to the last part of this, like we're now talking about career trajectory. This is usually where we've had player comps. I'll start with mine. So, and this is more long-term, not year one. Well, yeah. First one that like just kind of watching him and how he played is Owen Freeman from Iowa. I don't think it's a 1-to-1, but I think like I think Burgess is probably a little bit more athletic, but just kind of the style, the builds, like the ability to just kind of be able to score solid enough defense. Like it just reminded me of Owen Freeman. For any Purdue fans that have listened to me kind of be like, hey, I don't think Burgess is going to play, and you're disappointed in that. I thought last year Owen Freeman wasn't going to play. He was the best freshman in the Big Ten. So take that for what it's worth. My other one kind of Purdue, though, is like long term, and this is, I guess, kind of ceiling is like if you just took the good parts of TKR and you took the good parts of Caleb First and you put them together into a player, like I think that's pretty close to Burgess in my head, of this guy that, because I do really like him in the post. Like I like him in the post, but then he has more of the athleticism of First, of potentially being able to protect the rim. You hit on it a little bit of just him playing hard. That was like my first out of my like overall notes for him. First bullet point is rebounding, maybe the best attribute that transfers right away. Like this dude just works hard. He just gets after it. Similar to what we've seen from First and having that versatility. So like, that's kind of where my player comp goes, is like, and it fits with like my 4-5 thing with him, of like, you take the good parts of what TKR can do at the 4, you take the good parts of what First does at the 5 defensively, throw them together. And I think you got a really good player.
Yeah, and Joey, like, you know, you've played sports. I played sports growing up, but even little things. Think about card games. Think about shooting pool, throwing darts, whatever. When you look at somebody in their eyes and they just have that, like, I'm gonna win,
yeah,
like that confidence. my view so far of him is he's extremely confident in what he does, and that has value, right? We've seen these 30 for 30s or whatever about players that are like, oh, I never thought I was going to lose, blah blah blah. He has that like intrinsic confidence to him that I'm going to do well when I step on the court. So my initial career comp, and by the way, for anybody who's listened to all these shows, by the time we get through Jakari Harris, we're going to have like 4 All-Americans if they hit their upside from this freshman class. Make sure you understand we're talking about highest potential upside if everything comes together with that. My initial comp was Brad Miller. If you're a younger Purdue fan, maybe you don't know Brad Miller. You should go look him up if you did. But Brad Miller was 6'11", 244 pounds. Burgess is 6'10", 240 pounds right now. Relatively similar build. I think they both – Miller's kind of knock in college was he didn't always play hard, though. That's why I struggled with this comp a little bit. But I think their body style, a little bit of how they play. Miller, by his senior year, was like a 30% three-point shooter. That's before bigs were really stepping outside and shooting it. When he went to the NBA, he became a much better three-point shooter. Miller played way harder in the NBA. So I'm taking some pieces here. I don't know that Burgess ever becomes as good as Brad Miller and has a, 8 to 10 year NBA career or anything like that. I just think there's some similarities in their build and similarities in their game from that standpoint. My other comp, Joe, was just like a more aggressive, more confident Caleb First.
Yeah.
Like if you could just shoot that like aggression into Caleb First veins, that I want to go through you and I want to attack the rim and I'm going to pop off threes because I think everyone's going in, because I know what you said his high school stats were, but I watched highlights from one AAU weekend and I saw him hit more than 8 threes just in that one highlight set from one AAU weekend. So like I don't know. He's got that, to me, he's got a little bit of that it factor of like, I'm going to pop it. I'm going to make it type of thing. So that's where I'm at in my comps anyway. Either a more aggressive, more confident right now anyway. Caleb First or Brad Miller light with a better 3-point shot.
All right. Fair enough. And I think the theme for this is just like there is such an unknown with Burgess, and that's a good thing. Like that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's like we don't really know just how good this guy can be. I think for me, the realistic is that like he can eventually become like that. Maybe not the best player on the team, but the third option type, like that lead big or secondary kind of big, handles work down low, scores the ball pretty well, and fits into Purdue's offense. The only other thing, like, and maybe you hit on it and I just didn't quite get it, is like we talk, because I know for sure we talked about him perimeter defense, right? And that's what, when we talk about the big room, I'll talk about why I still have hope for First. But like First has this upside of perimeter defense. Like he can legit guard 4s and 5s, protect the rim, guard on the perimeter. Like there's that upside to him. We talked about the perimeter with Burgess, right? Where we think he's not the quickest. I think he moves well. Like I think he moves well north-south, but not like east-west. Straight
line speed is good. Lateral speed isn't great. And he just doesn't like move his hips great.
Yeah, he's pretty stiff in the
initial
hips.
direction. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, can he be a rim protector? Can he be a rim protector day one? And can he be a rim protector his senior year?
Yeah, I don't know. And I think it's difficult because like we have that Purdue mindset of, well, can he guard a guy that's 7'3"? How many 7'3" guys are in the Big Ten? Like, can he guard Michigan State's big men? Probably. Like, no offense to Michigan State or Carter Elliott or anybody like that. But like, I mean, there's a lot of Big Ten teams. He probably can. Can he guard Hunter Dickinson? Can he guard, Kalkbrenner last year or Zach Edey last year? Like, no, I don't think there's any chance. But I think he probably holds up in the post defensively just because he's so sturdy, built, and strong and wants to play with a lot of aggression and handle that. So I think the majority of the time he can, but there's going to be 25 to 30% of the time he can't.
Which, as a freshman, is very fair. Because I think that's the one path we probably didn't talk about quite enough is like, what if he just works as a 5, right? Of hey, he can just kind of he can help protect the rim. He has a good post up game. He can set a screen and roll. And so maybe like that just is kind of how it works. That you are going through at that point. He's battling Berg, Jacobson. Like, I mean, he's battling everybody pretty much at that point. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm going back to the shooting, and like I'm not discrediting anything you said, because like there is something to just having that it factor. But like in high, like he can take a jump shooting 100%. The numbers in high school just don't back it. So he's about a 65% career free throw shooter. He's like a 31 on 3-point shooter on low volume. AAU is similar numbers. All that to say,
you found his AAU stats
from 20. Yeah, well, it's not all of them. It's like probably half.
Okay.
All that to say, I don't expect it year one. Dudes develop. Maybe like it's going to work at some point. That's all I wanted to add there. So this has probably been one of our. Oh, you got
sorry, but
I was
related.
Up, so you
relating to the free throws, like as I was watching today, I was like, wow, I didn't realize he'd be this bad of a free throw shooter, given the way that he looks shooting a 3-point shot.
That's
so I'm with you there
like
on
that.
Yeah, I'm with you there on the free throw shooting. That last thing, and then I'll let you wrap up. Like his ball handling at his size is good.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were multiple times you saw him like take the ball, like get a rebound and just go down full court.
Yeah.
Or take a guy much smaller than him off the dribble from the perimeter. How often will he be asked to do that in Purdue's offense? Probably not a lot, but we have seen TKR face up on the wing and take a guy off. And a lot of times he goes back to a post move once he takes him off of that. But like, I just thought that was a note that should be mentioned too, that he's a pretty good ball handler for a guy that size and that weight.
Yeah, no, I noticed that too. And it's just like, I'm with you there. It was a note of like, I think my exact note was like, he showed the ability to do it, which is a good thing. I don't know if he'll ever be asked to do it, but like, I'd rather the guy show that he can than not. So yeah, there was a couple comments. Goon said 130 sickos listening to CBB talking mid-July. Gotta love it. I mean, that's what we're here for. We are 102 days away from November 4th, so it's gonna get here closer than we think. Who's Johnny said, I think Purdue will surprise a lot of people this year. I'm sure we'll have preview shows coming, especially September, October area. Sydney said, just the singular thought for the whole week, Joe. That was in reference to my Zach Edey question off the top. Yeah, that was just like the only one my whole week. That's all I've thought about is, man, was this the greatest Purdue play ever in men's basketball history? And then Tommy Wallen says, I'm going to get teary every episode. Tammy. Sorry, Tammy Wallen said, I'm going to get teary every episode with the new intro, Boiler Up. We appreciate everybody tuning in. I meant to say this off the top because that's what good podcast hosts are supposed to do. But if you guys are enjoying this series, we're going to try to do pretty much once a week. Like, please hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. It helps us a lot. Commenting throughout the show also helps. We really do appreciate all the support and just kind of the interaction. So doing those little things helps us a lot. Just lets us keep kind of making this content. So next week will be the last freshman in our kind of freshman preview series, which is Jakari Harris, probably the one I am most excited to talk about. That will be sometime next week. We kind of figure out the day when it comes, and we'll figure it out then. But you can follow us on Twitter at Boilers and Stands just to be notified for that. Or you can turn on notifications on YouTube too. You'll get notified when we go live every time. So appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will catch you all sometime next week.